From your perspective, who now has the power to shape the public image of the architect? And does that still rest within the hands of the architect, or have we lost space to startups and investors?
No, I mean, I think that power has always been within ourselves. It's in our ability to get out of our own way to talk about it. Let's call it out. Like architects have a really hard time defining their value. You want to get paid for the value that you think you are worth, then you have to be able to clearly define what that value is. We can't rely on a big association to run a single marketing campaign and believe that like all the world's going to all of a sudden be like, oh man, I that moved me. This is what I normally pay, but I think I should be paying 20% more for the same thing that I've been paying for before. There's not a single marketing campaign that has ever moved me to want to pay more for something that I've already paid for. So I think it's incumbent upon kind of the architects as individuals, but in terms of how we empower each other, both as individuals with architecture backgrounds to go out and talk about that, or disempower by saying, "Oh no, Minkoo, you're on the developers, like you're a developer now. Don't talk about how you're an architect." I think that does, that does a disservice to architects.
Traditionally, public images of certain professions were heavily shaped by movies and media. If we look at the latest movie, Brutalist, I think
Oh, I have
for
not
me,
seen it.
oh, you haven't seen it,
Have you
but
guys all seen it?
I
No, I
watched
think
it.
See,
I watched
haven't
it,
seen it yet.
but I wasn't impressed because of the rhetorical figure that they continue to portray of this kind of herded creative, with visions only. And I think that's a very difficult proposition to make in these days. And, it's been a very traditional way of relying on awards or kind of your status among your peers, and marketing that as, oh, look how many awards I got, therefore my fees are a little higher than the others. Like, I think there should be a way to differentiate yourself more than that, to make your life more easier and more effective.
Well, I think the single genius is it's a myth in architecture, and it's becoming more of a myth because buildings are just more complex. Like you talked about the scale of building Minkoo and how it relates to someone's identity as an architect or not. Like there's no single building that you can do by yourself these days. Even if you can construct it, you're going to need to have authorization from somebody else. And so the architect is much more of a conductor nowadays. They don't necessarily have to play the violin, but they need to know how the violin works with the flute, works with the brass, and see it all come together, I guess. And I think maybe going back to your point, Evelyn, that's why it's hard maybe to assign a particular value to things, versus the star architects who can say, well, look, I designed this amazing building, I designed this airport, and tourism increased by this percent, versus the everyday architect has a much harder time establishing that.
design awards are kind of representative of the fact that we like to talk about things from our perspective. In order for others to understand the value that we're delivering, we have to really take the time to understand what they care about and then speak to the value from their perspective. And I think that's hard to do because throughout school, we're trained to defend our work. We're not necessarily trained to talk about how our work is meaningful to others through their lens of what they find most meaningful.
Definitely. But is there an avenue to do that?
Yeah, every time you sit down with a potential client, there's an opportunity. I think you really have to understand the client, though. I was on the client side, essentially the developer side. Minkoo, like you're on the client side, right? Like I was on the client side, and I've dealt with architects who knew I was an architect, who between the weekly meeting, like didn't change the one thing that I really needed them to change because I don't know, architecture egoism, like the ego of the architect. And I was like, I'm the client and I'm the one with the money, and I know my people. So I know this is not, this is not how you designed it, but this is what we need. So I think like that in and of itself to understand and adapt to the needs of the clients, let alone then talk about how what we are designing is of true value to them, I think is just hard.
So maybe more empathy, like understanding each other's needs a little bit better.
I know, but architects love to
I think
think
it's
that they
also a
have
mindset
empathy. Yes,
thing
both.
where like architects like to think they have empathy, but not for the developer's wallet, right?
That's the
Um,
problem.
Oh, there you
that's something
go.
that I feel like, especially in tech, there's a lot more of a culture of is like justify the value before you go do the thing. Like a lot of the mistakes that I've made, I think in my shift to tech is in these situations is building the thing before we validate it whether or not it's valuable to build. And it's this thing where it's
Yeah.
if it's not being used, it's not valuable, right? Like it doesn't matter how much work you put into it. Yet the mindset that we come out of school with is like it's back to that portfolio thing where it's this thing that gets more valuable the more stuff you like pack into it. And when you have 10 years of stuff, finally you'll be a valuable architect and you can like raise your fees.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's a really important point because like you have to have a business case for anything on the tech side. So like if it doesn't have a business case, they're going to be like, nope, we pass on it.
Most Podern.
Most Podern.
Most Podern.
Most Podern.
모스트 포던 팟캐스트